So what we need to understand is how this Mishnah affects us in terms of our mentality, affects us in terms of our deeper engagement with this world. How is it going to shift us that we're going to go away from this Mishnah and say, wow, sure, I've got something to work on. I've got something different. I've got a new paradigm to engage with in terms of my lifestyle, in terms of my mentality, in terms of my ideology. How's my life better from learning this Mishnah? So I'm just going to reinstate the Mishnah again, and then we'll ask you, Jenny. So Rabbi Yaakov said, this world, this world is a corridor before the world to come. Prepare yourself in the antechamber, in the corridor, in order to enter into the traklin, in order to enter into the banquet hall. Okay? Okay, let's give this a shot. Jenny, you want to try and understand this Mishnah for us?
It kind of says it all there, but if one is going into the banquet hall, if one is going into the palace, and one knows that that's definite. We don't know anything else. We know that we're going to die. That's about the only thing we know. One can then say, how do I want to be? Who do I want to be when I get there? Who do I want to be? And what am I preparing myself for that space? And we're very lucky because we have the entire manuscript to guide us exactly how to prepare ourselves here. And once you accept that, then it kind of frees you from worry. It frees you from, well, not entirely. I mean, depends who you are. But it gives you a very interesting relaxation from worrying about this world, because you now know exactly what you have to do, but you just don't know who you want to be.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. I'll tell you, I think firstly, yes, you're 100% right. You know, it puts things into context. That's what it definitely does. But the issue with taking a Olam Haba approach with life is it's very, very removed from us, okay? You know, what I'm saying is, how do we make it that it's actually tangible in our experience? You know, to say that we have to do everything in this world for the world to come is a very difficult framework for people to engage with. Very, very difficult in people's minds and mentalities. It's very hard to keep that consciousness, especially that we don't even know what the world to come is, you know? So that's my issue with this. When you read this Mishnah, how does it deeply affect you? How does it tangibly affect you? Okay? So I think you're right in saying it puts things into context, and we'll try and deal with that. Anyone else want to suggest?
Yeah, Rob?
In a way, it's a warning to person. Prepare yourself in this world so that you can enter the banquet hall. Prepare yourself properly in this world.
Okay.
Don't ignore the Torah and the rules. Be a decent person so that you can enter the banquet hall. Otherwise, you might not enter the banquet hall.
But I don't even know what the banquet hall is. I don't even know what they're serving there. I haven't even seen the menu, you know, like, why do I care? You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's warning a person that there is a banquet hall, and you, after life, you have to enter it.
But that we know that already. That's the problem.
Done the right thing in this world, you won't enter the decent. You'll be at the back tables in the back of the hall instead of near the main table.
Okay, good. You're saying something there which I want to hone in there. Okay, good, Mark. Yeah, what are you saying?
Yeah, just a small thing, Rob. The one word that I'm just thinking through that literally connects it is the word corridor. Why wouldn't they just say from one world to the next? What's the thing about the corridor? And just the small thing that comes to mind on that is that it's a process. You have to prepare. It's not an instant thing that you're going to get in there. I'm just adding on to what Jacques and Jenny were saying, is that it's like anything. You can't just say, okay, I'll do a few good things now because I know I'm going to end there. So it's a constant process, and make sure you get through the transition of the corridor. That's the only other thing that kind of strikes me at this stage.
Beautiful. I really like that. I really like that, Mark. That's a very powerful concept there, in terms of understanding that life is a process. And I think that's a very powerful teaching here. You see, Alan and Jenny, this is a point that I take issue with. I think firstly what you're saying is very powerful, and there's a lot in what you're saying. We're going to develop it. But I'm going to be personal with you and say, all right, fine, there's a world to come. Good, you know. But like, how, honestly, how much is that going to change our consciousness in this world? And to a certain extent, does that rob us from experiencing HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world? Essentially, it's about experiencing Hashem, being conscious of Hashem in our lives, rather than be like these like little boys and girls having to organize ourselves and do the right thing in order to get reward in the world to come. It seems a little bit childlike, you know, a little bit simplistic in terms of our engagement here. And that's why I want to develop this Mishnah, or at least our understanding of this Mishnah, to see a much deeper chidush that's coming out here. And I think Mark's concept here, that life is a process, to be able to see our lives and ourselves as a process, and to recognize that failure and imperfection is part and parcel of our existence, and to be very much okay with failure and with imperfection in terms of our own development. And what a person generally does when they fail, or when they, you know, don't live up to their expectations, they berate themselves and they speak negatively to themselves and they undermine themselves. And what Mark is saying here is, no, this world is a corridor. It's all about process. Hashem doesn't expect you to click your fingers and then you're a perfect person that just steps into the world to come. It's a process, and just continue with the process and understand that life and our existence in this world is a process, and be a little bit more merciful where it comes to your development as an individual. Philip said here, where does it say that we will automatically be on the guest list? So, in fact, that's a good question. It says, Kol Yisrael chelek, yesh lehem chelek lo inam haba. Every Jewish person, what it means to be Jewish is a question in terms of that consciousness the Baal Shem Tov brings, and even the Gemara in Avodah Zarah brings, that what does it mean to be a Jew? It means someone that doesn't believe in idolatry. And what the Baal Shem Tov says, idolatry is the ego, is gaiva, is self-centeredness, okay? So every individual essentially who has that type of mindset is really open to the experience of the world to come, and you're automatically on the guest list somewhat. Some want to say, okay, every Jew automatically is on the guest list. However you understand that, but I prefer to understand the framework of every individual that has a consciousness and doesn't focus on their ego and sees life beyond that ego automatically has a portion in the world to come, okay? So I think the first point that we're learning here, which Mark has really opened up, is process. Very, very, very important in our own personal talk to ourselves. When there's failure, when there's imperfection, and truthfully, you know, we'll speak about it maybe this week when it comes to the mindfulness talk with Gardens on Thursday night. The ability to be mindful and be in the moment and experience life comes from the ability to be open to realize that things don't come to an end. Things are open, that you can't be perfect in every circumstance, and you can't reach that experience of, I'm there now, you know? We always say to ourselves, the next thing is going to make us there. The next thing we do, it's going to, I'm going to feel fully there. You're never there. But in never being there, you're essentially there. Understand? In understanding that you're never there and it's a corridor, you actually tap into the deeper state of consciousness through being within that mentality, and then you can actually be there. Now I can actually not worry about the future. I know the future is also going to be a corridor. So let me enjoy the moment that I'm in now. Okay, that's the concept there with the Prazdor. What I want to share with you is two more understandings. Okay, the first comes from a very Kabbalistic film called Borat. Has anyone seen Borat? Yes, Philip, you've seen Borat. Gary, you've seen Borat. A lot of people have seen Borat. Amazing. Okay. Sacha Baron Cohen. You hear the teachings from Sacha Baron Cohen, the Cohen, the priest. So in the film, I remember watching this a while back. One of the first things is, he goes into a very expensive hotel, and he asks for his room. And then, as he's being taken up to his room, he's being brought in the elevator, yeah. And he's standing there with his bags in the elevator, and the guy's standing there taking him to his room, and he starts to unpack his bags in the elevator, saying, "Wow, this is such a beautiful room, such nice mirrors. It's so beautiful." And the guy's explaining to him, "No, this is not the room. This is the elevator that's taking you to your room," yeah. And I found that to be a very powerful, realization, in that, do we engage with this world as such a focal point in terms of unpacking our bags, placing such a focus on our engagement with this world as if it's everything. And when something goes wrong, my life is over, this is it. Where there's a recognition to the transience of this world. As I think it was the Chofetz Chaim, they asked him, why is it that, you don't have so much furniture, in your home? So he said, well, listen, when you travel, do you take everything with you? He says, obviously not. I take just the bare necessities in my bag, So he says, same too. We're just travelers through this world, just travelers. But on a deeper experience, it's not to say you don't experience this world in a deep way. It doesn't mean that you're not present in this world. It just means that through seeing the world as transient, you're actually more present. It's the issue is we try to make this world so resolute and so concrete and so unchanging that we actually rob ourselves from the experience of this world. It's because we're worrying about, how do I make sure that my bank account is a certain way, and how do I make sure that my experience of this world is a certain way, that we actually rob ourselves from the experience. So when we realize this world is just a transient experience, but there's actually a truckling, meaning there is a banquet hall. There is a focal point on the essential experience of the world, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Meaning you're looking at the light at the end of the tunnel, but you're actually experiencing the light through looking up. So when we look at the light itself, we're actually experiencing life in its source, in its essence. So it's totally being present in this world, but it's almost like when I drink this, so I can get stuck by the flavor, by the taste, by the texture, etc., etc. Or I can look even deeper beyond it and see it as just the antechamber, and experience something even deeper through the experience of drinking water itself, that I'm actually experiencing an element of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a life force through that I can actually galvanize even more through my experience. So that's the concept from Borat, okay? That don't unpack your bags in the elevator, okay? This world is not a world to unpack your bags. Yes, when you are a tourist, you are very present in your experience of the world. Wow, look how gorgeous that is. Look how beautiful that is. Look how amazing and fresh and new that is. That's definitely what our perspective of this world needs to be. But don't ever unpack your bags in the state that, this is my place, and this is what it has to be like, and this is what my room has to look like, and this is what everything has to be like. Then you're not a tourist. And if you're not a tourist, you're not going to be able to appreciate the world in a deeper way. Okay, that's the second concept here that we've learned. So first one is understanding process, understanding the concept and the reality of process within ourselves, in our own self-growth, and when we make mistakes or we don't do things in the right way, we feel somewhat vulnerable, say to ourselves, okay, what can I learn from this? What can I engage with in terms of doing something better next time? But it doesn't essentially define me. You know, it doesn't define me. I need to move forward. The next step we understood was, don't unpack your bags in this world. Okay, this world is not a place to really establish. It's not an establishment. The world is a world of flux. You're never going to find a state of established living in this world. Okay, this world by definition is constantly in flux and constantly eroding, and you're just running on the perpetual treadmill that never stops. Okay, it never, ever, ever stops. The only way to make it stop is to see and realize that this world is of transient nature and is just a corridor. Enjoy the scenery, enjoy the beautiful things, but don't unpack your bags. Okay. The third concept is the following, and this is brought down by the Maharal, who explains that, and it's also brought down by certain Hasidus and explanations within Hasidus. Actually, I need to correct that. It's not by the Maharal. It's actually by the Nesivos Shalom, by the Slonim Rebbe. He says the following on this Mishnah. Slonim Rebbe explains that this world is a world of preparation. What does that mean? What does that mean? So he explains that the way that you engage with this world in terms of your connection to Torah and mitzvahs is the way that you'll be able to experience it in the world to come. Okay? What that means, and he gives a following explanation. He says, let's say you're a person, this is his example, but everyone can attribute it to themselves in a certain context. Let's say you're a person that learns Torah and keeps the mitzvahs and does everything. But when it comes to Shabbos, you don't feel the enjoyment. You don't feel the immense spiritual energy of Shabbos. Okay, it's a time to sleep, it's a time to eat, time to be with the family. There's no spiritual elation that generally takes place in the Shabbos. Whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? Yours. The fault is yours, which means every individual, it's incumbent upon every individual to feel the energy through that mitzvah and feel the energy and the exuberance and the excitement through performing the mitzvah. When we get up and daven, why don't we feel the excitement and the consciousness and the elation? Is it Hashem's fault? No, it's our fault because we're not tapping in properly. We're not focusing in properly. We are rather being bombarded by the egoic conceptual frameworks of worry and identity that preclude our experience in really feeling the excitement and essential experience within that spiritual framework. Now, the consequence of that is we are subject to the same creations that we perform or the same levels that we attain in this world. So if we never experience that exuberance through Torah learning, or we never experience the sweetness through certain mitzvahs because we never pulled ourselves into it properly and understood it properly and really focused in on it properly, then when it comes to the world to come, yeah, you'll be allowed in. You'll be allowed in. But as Alan said, you sort of will have a back seat in the sense that, all right, well, here it is. This is the world to come. Here is your experience. But you get to the level of attainment and joy and sensitivity that you were able to develop in the corridor, in this world, okay? So another totally different but same way that the Nesivos Shalom explains this is if you imagine the world to come being an extreme light, and this world being a time to acclimatize and accustom ourselves to the light, then what happens, it's almost, I don't know if anyone's engaged with developing photos. Gary can maybe illuminate us in this type of experience here. We also have Jenny, of course, our photographer, But when it comes to developing film, yeah, I don't know if they do this today anymore. Yeah, you still do it. Yeah, you need to have a dark room. And I remember in Mariah College in Australia, we used to have a dark room, and they used to teach us in the school how to develop photos. And I remember the experience of being in this dark room for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then you walk out into the daylight, you know, and they placed the dark room like right next to like the whole courtyard. When you walk out, you're really getting streams of light in your face. And I remember it's almost painful. It's almost blinding, that type of experience. And the same too is here. The experience in the world to come is an experience of light, deep, deep illumination. And if in this world we are unable to acclimatize ourselves, to start to slowly open our eyes in terms of our deep awareness of what is, and start to experience the light of the next world in this world, then when it comes to the next world, we can, God forbid, be blinded by that light to the extent that it's a painful experience, where it's a immobilizing experience, where the Nesiv Shalom explains that that's the plague of darkness in Egypt, that the Egyptians who were not ready for that light were immobilized. They couldn't move. They couldn't move. They were blinded. It was a tangible darkness. While for the Jews, they were able to move. So what that means for us is this world is a world of preparation. If we're able to bring in that light through our experience of mitzvahs, through our experience of Shabbos, through our experience of what seems to be without flavor, but we bring in the flavor, then that's going to be the barometer of our experience in the world to come. And that's it. It doesn't go beyond that. However much we experience and taste it in this world is what we're going to experience and taste in the world to come. It's up to us. To the extent the Maharal says that if a person doesn't believe in the world to come, you know what their punishment is? They don't get it. They don't get the world to come. Whose fault is that? Their own. Meaning, we are the creators of our own realities. And when we create a certain reality and we create a certain sensitivity and we remove the callousness from our experience, that's what we're left with. That's how we experience it. I just want to conclude with a famous story. From the Maram Rottenberg. He brings a story. He says, the world to come is a banquet hall. Beautiful story. The world to come is a banquet hall. And he says, when you come to Gehenna, when the experience of hell is also a banquet hall. Okay? And he explains that the experience of the banquet hall is that every individual has, instead of arms, or let's say they have arms, the cutlery is extremely long. So the knives are very, very long, and the forks are very, very long, and right at the end, there is a little knife and a little fork, very long. And the tables are very, very wide. So now what the experience of hell is you have this huge knife and fork, very long, and they bring out the most exquisite banquet, the most amazing food that if you saw this, you would just start drooling. You've never smelled or tasted such food. And you're hungry, you want to eat. And then you come to your knife and fork, that's the only way you can eat it. And you try and pull it down, but it's too long. And there's no way of putting your head down because it's tied up, so you can only use your knife and fork. And everyone's struggling, trying to eat their food, but they can't. And that's the experience of the world, that's the experience of Gehenna, that's the experience of hell. That there's something that has potential in front of you, but you can't taste it, you can't experience it. That's the most painful thing that a person can experience spiritually. When it comes to heaven, when it comes to the world to come, it's exactly the same. Exactly the same. But there's one fundamental difference, and that is when you walk into the banquet hall, everyone is satiated and everyone is eating. And the reason is because instead of feeding themselves, they're feeding the person in front of them. They're feeding the person that's at the end of the table, that's across from them. And each person is feeding one another, and they're able to enjoy from the experience of the banquet. And that's the essential understanding here, that if we create a sensitivity, a lack of focus on self, ability to remove and relinquish our trapped realities that come from the ego, that we're able to become more sensitive to the elements of spirituality and our engagement with mitzvahs and Torah and the deeper essence of who we are. And we're able to engage ourselves with chesed and bring ourselves to that deep sensitivity and love for the other. Then, not only do we experience the world to come in the world to come, but the rabbis say that we experience the world to come in this world as well. And that's the understanding, that when we have that type of deep, deep recognition in seeing this world as a corridor, then we actually experience the world to come in this world as well. Okay, so just to recap very quickly, the first concept we learned was the concept of process. Okay, seeing ourselves within the state of process, not being harsh on ourselves and saying you're a failure, there's no hope for you. There's always hope. There's always an ability to start again, always an ability to get up and say, now I'm going to be better now, and I'm going to move forward now. No matter what I did before, I'm going to bring myself now in. Second, and if I fall again, all right, interesting. What can that teach me about me? What can I learn more about myself in that experience? Beautiful, Mark. Then the second concept we heard from Jenny and from Alan, and I brought in the concept from Sacha Baron Cohen from Borat, and that is to not unpack our bags in this world. Understand that this world is of great transience, be able to see ourselves as tourists, travelers, but in that, then being able to actually see the beauty of this world even more. You know how many people, when I was in Australia, I mean, I don't know if I ever properly traveled in Australia, and you see these tourists coming there and they're traveling the whole country, and no one realizes how much there is to see. And that's the same, when you actually live in a certain place, you actually stop traveling, you stop seeing what there is to see. And that's what we're seeing here. Stop unpacking the bags. We are tourists with our bags that see the beautiful, beautiful aspects of this world. That only comes once we're able to relinquish our requirement of this world to be a solid infrastructure, our requirement of this world to be something that's resolute and concrete. It's impossible. It's impossible. It's not accessible, okay? But through that, we actually open our experience of this world even more. Then the final concept is I'm sure there's some terminology or phrase for this famous adage, but I can't think of it now. But, whatever we prepare in this world is what we consume in the world to come. The analogy that's given is whatever you cook for Shabbos is what you eat. You're not allowed to cook on Shabbos. Whatever you've already prepared is what you eat. So however much you prepare in this world in terms of lifting up your experience of the mitzvahs. So when you're putting on your tefillin, or when you're lighting your Shabbos candles, or when you're davening, how much do you experience Hashem in that? Or do you just say, you know what, I'm not inspired now, so I'm just going to leave it. I'm not really going to bring Hashem into the picture. Well, that's you. That's up to you. You're the one there that's got the ability to bring it in. And that's what you're going to experience in the world to come. If Shabbos is just the experience of laws, well, that's what it is in the world to come. It's just going to be a dry, non-essential experience. Yeah. So that's the concept that we learned from the Maram Rothenberg of the cutlery, and the ability to sensitize ourselves in this world is what is going to allow us to experience the world to come in the next, but also in this world as well. All right. Any questions in the last 4 minutes that we have? Donkey. Thank you. Have a beautiful day, everyone. Lovely to see you. And we'll come together at 12, God willing, and carry on our journey together. Lots of love and bracha. Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Pleasure.